The Canadian forest holds mysteries that defy logic and awaken the primal fear of those who dare to explore it. Among its ancient trees and silent lakes, there are accounts of strange disappearances and unexplainable sightings. And among all the stories that echo through these lands, the legend of the Wendigo stands out. A ravenous, skeletal, and insatiable creature that roams the darkness, always searching for its next victim. Its name is whispered with caution, as many believe that even speaking it aloud can draw its presence closer. The Algonquian people spoke of the Wendigo as a warning that unrelenting hunger could turn a man into a monster. According to Algonquian mythology, those who gave in to the desperation of starvation, especially during brutal winters, risked being possessed by this dark entity. But some believe the Wendigo doesn't just feed on human flesh. It feeds on the sanity of its victims. The psychological torment it unleashes is just as devastating as its appetite. But is this legend just a tale to scare off reckless travelers? Or is there something more behind the reports of shadows in the woods, deformed footprints, and screams that echo through the night? What you're about to hear might forever change the way you see the untamed Canadian wilderness. At first, it seemed like just another adventure deep in the heart of nature. The seasoned Dr. Cathcart, his young nephew Simpson, and a group of skilled guides set off on a hunting expedition, eager to test their endurance against the biting cold and vastness of the Canadian wilderness. The promise of a true challenge thrilled them, and none suspected they were about to face something far beyond their abilities. The wind howled through the tall branches, and the silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves, already hinted that this place harbored dark secrets. As they ventured deeper into the forest, small warning signs began to appear. The animals seemed restless. Birds would suddenly go silent, and now and then, a dry snap echoed from an undefined spot in the distance. But what truly started to unsettle the group was the shift in the guide's behavior, especially Defago, a seasoned hunter who began to show uncharacteristic unease. His eyes scanned the woods constantly, as if searching for something or dreading that something was watching them. The group didn't know it yet, but they had crossed an invisible threshold into a territory that perhaps should never have been explored. Defago, a man hardened by survival in the harshest conditions, felt that something was circling them. The sense of being watched grew with each step, and the weight of old superstitions began to settle in the air. In the heart of the forest, fear is as vital as fire. But when even the most experienced hunters start to hesitate, maybe it's already too late to turn back. The forest seemed to breathe around them, but it wasn't a natural breath. There was something in the air, something that made even the skeptics second-guess themselves. Defago, the most seasoned guide in the group, showed clear signs of nervousness. His eyes darted erratically, and his hands, once steady and confident, trembled slightly as he handled his gear. For a man used to surviving the harshest environments, this behavior was more frightening than any visible threat. Something was wrong, and he knew it better than anyone. When Dr. Cathcart suggested exploring a remote and barely mapped region, Defago's reaction was immediate. His eyes widened, his face turned pale, and for a moment, he seemed to lose his breath. Muttering in his native tongue, he tried to convince the group to change course, insisting that the area was cursed. But to the Western scientists and hunters, it just sounded like native superstition, a folktale meant to scare off the curious. The problem is, in the forest, some legends aren't just stories. They're warnings. Still, Defago pressed on, though his face betrayed a restrained terror, as if he were forcing himself to ignore a primal instinct to flee. He knew something lurked in those dense shadows, and every step toward the unknown felt like an invitation to destruction. But what could be so dreadful that it made a seasoned man like him tremble? They would soon find out, and regret deeply not heeding the warning. Night fell on the camp like a heavy, silent blanket. The fire crackled weakly, casting flickering shadows on the tall trees, while the wind whistled through the dry branches. Defago, usually calm and professional, was restless. He sniffed the air like a cornered animal, wide eyes scanning the darkness around them. Simpson, who shared the tent with him, noticed his guide couldn't sleep, murmuring incoherently and staring at the entrance, as if waiting for something. Or someone. In the middle of the night, a chilling sound cut through the silence. It wasn't the distant howl of a wolf, nor the snap of a branch underfoot. It was a call, a long, distorted whisper that seemed to carry Defago's name on the wind. Simpson woke with a jolt and found the guide shaking, eyes glazed over, and a look of pure terror on his face. He was drenched in cold sweat, lips muttering something about burning feet and a wind that dragged souls. Whatever was out there, it wasn't human. Fear spread like poison. Defago began to cry uncontrollably, a grown man reduced to a state of sheer terror. His hands clutched his arms tightly, as if trying to hold on to his sanity. Simpson, despite his own fear, tried to calm him down, but it was already too late. Something was lurking nearby, something invisible, yet undeniably present. The air felt heavier, like an unseen force was on the verge of revealing itself. And then, the call echoed again, this time closer. The forest, which had only whispered before, now seemed to wait. The call came again, more insistent, now almost hypnotic. The voice had an unnatural tone, something that seemed to glide through the air rather than just make sound. Defago, already in a state of absolute panic, leapt out of the tent as if something had yanked him. His eyes were wide, his breath ragged, and his body trembled as if a sudden fever had taken hold. Simpson tried to hold him back, pleading for him to stay, but it was useless. In a burst of terror, the guide sprinted into the forest, vanishing among the dark trees. The young man stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. He called out Defago's name, but only silence answered. Even the wind had stilled, and the natural sounds of the forest had faded, as if nature itself was holding its breath. A chill ran down his spine as the realization hit him. He was alone. Completely alone. No animals. No movement. Just a darkness that now seemed deeper than ever before. Simpson grabbed his flashlight and stepped out of the tent, fear pounding in his veins like a deafening drum. His boots sank into the soft snow as he walked, calling out for his missing friend. But the farther he wandered from camp, the more the dread grew. There was no sign of Defago, no clear trail. Only the faint echo of what might have been a scream, or perhaps just the wind mocking him. Whatever had taken his guide wasn't just a nighttime delusion, it was real. It was out there in the forest. And Simpson wasn't sure he'd make it out alive. With his heart hammering in his chest, Simpson trudged through the snow, searching for any sign of Defago. Then, he saw something that froze his blood: footprints. At first, they looked normal boot prints heading into the dark. But as he followed them, something strange began to happen. The tracks started to change. First, they grew farther apart, as if Defago had been running at an inhuman speed. Then, they started to look less human and more animal. What had once been boot prints had morphed into twisted shapes, as though the feet had stretched and deformed into something grotesque. Simpson knelt to examine them more closely, and horror took hold of him. The prints were getting larger, the outlines uneven, as if something was growing inside Defago's body. Was it a hallucination? Could the cold and fear be playing tricks on his mind? Or worse, was the legend of the Wendigo real, and he was witnessing something beyond explanation? Around him, the forest felt like it was waiting. The shadows between the trees looked denser, and the air heavier. An irrational urge to run surged through Simpson, abandon the search, and flee back to camp, but something inside wouldn't let him leave. He had to understand. He had to know what had happened to Defago. But deep down, a whisper echoed in his mind: what if he's not the same anymore? The forest seemed to hold its breath. Each step Simpson took sank silently into the snow, muffling the sound of his own movements. The silence was total until a ghostly sound sliced through the night. A scream, long, distorted, echoing through the trees as if it had no real source. Simpson froze. The voice was strange, but somehow familiar. It repeated fragmented phrases, nonsense words, until one sent a shiver through his bones. My feet are on fire. The phrase echoed again, closer this time. It was Defago's voice, but something was terribly wrong with it, like it was blended with a deep, guttural whisper, something not of this world. Simpson looked around, wide-eyed, searching for any trace of the guide. The fear slithered down his spine as he noticed the twisted footprints continued on, leading toward a place where the shadows grew even darker. There, between the trees, something was moving. He couldn't tell if it was a man or a beast, but every instinct screamed at him to run. The figure flickered, as if made of darkness itself, and its eyes seemed to glow in the gloom. Nausea hit him, as if he were being pulled into a nightmare he'd never wake up from. The Wendigo wasn't just a myth. It was real, and its hunger spared no one. Simpson realized, far too late, that he was being called in now. It might be his turn to disappear. Hours passed. The cold grew more intense, and Simpson fought to keep his grip on reality. He wasn't sure if he was still following Defago's trail or just wandering, lost in the psychological torment that oozed from the forest itself. Then something unexpected. A figure appeared in the distance. Stumbling, moving strangely, a man returning to camp. His body was gaunt, his skin stretched tight over bone, and his steps weren't normal. Simpson ran to meet him, a mix of relief and dread churning in his gut. It was Defago, but not the same man who had vanished hours before. His face was distorted by something more than cold or exhaustion, something inhuman. His once alert eyes now looked hollow, lost in an endless abyss. When he tried to speak, his voice dragged out slowly, as though words were hard to form. His body was rigid, like it was being moved by something other than his own will. But the most terrifying part were his feet, those horrifying footprints. They were his. His boots had torn apart, and his skin looked fused with the ice, as if he had walked for miles without feeling a thing. Simpson took a step back, stomach twisting as he faced the impossible. Was this still Defago? Or had the Wendigo already claimed his soul? Simpson tried to speak, but his throat was dry. The creature before him still had Defago's appearance, but something was deeply wrong. His body trembled unnaturally, as though invisible forces tugged at him. His blank, lifeless eyes showed no trace of humanity, and his breath came out in short, irregular clouds. Every instinct told Simpson to run, but his legs wouldn't move, paralyzed by a fear that went beyond the cold. The other members of the expedition, alarmed by the noise, emerged from their tents and froze when they saw Defago. Dr. Cathcart cautiously approached, calling out to the guide. But the thing standing there didn't answer right away. When it finally opened its mouth, a faint whisper escaped. "Fire on my feet." Fire. Burning. The voice was distant, as if the real Defago was trapped somewhere deep inside his own body. The horror was undeniable. Everyone could feel that this man was no longer the same. Suddenly, in a violent spasm, Defago dropped to his knees. His body convulsed, as if he were fighting something inside him, and then he stopped. His gaze turned to the sky, and for a moment, a guttural, almost animalistic sound echoed from his throat. And then he vanished. There was no final scream, no struggle, just silence. The group stood there, frozen in terror, staring at the empty space where a man had just been. The forest swallowed him back into the darkness, as if it had never let him go. The silence that followed was deafening. The expedition stood still, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Defago had vanished before their eyes, as though the forest had claimed him. No one dared to move. No one spoke. The cold wind cut through the trees, carrying the faint echo of what might have been a call. Or maybe just the haunted imaginations of those who survived. Whatever happened that night, they knew it defied all logic. The next day, the group decided to leave. None of them wanted to spend another night in that cursed place. As they packed up camp, Simpson scanned the surroundings, hoping to find any trace of Defago. But there was nothing. No footprints. No sign had ever been there, as if he had simply never existed. Yet, in the distance, among the dark tree trunks, Simpson swore he saw a tall, skeletal shadow watching them. Was it just a trick of the light? Or was the Wendigo still out there, waiting for its next victim? The experience haunted them forever. For the scientists, it remained an unsolvable mystery. For Simpson, it was a trauma that would never let go. But for the native guides and hunters, The answer was simple: Defago had fallen victim to the Wendigo's cursey, an entity that feeds not just on human flesh, but on fear and the very sanity of those who dare trespass its domain. This wasn't just a scary story. It was a warning, because in the depths of the Canadian wilderness, not all legends are just legends. So what do you think? Is the Wendigo just a chilling myth meant to scare travelers away from the dangers of the forest? Or is there something far darker hiding in the wilds of nature? Was Defago's disappearance just a hallucination brought on by cold and fear? Or was he truly consumed by a supernatural force? One thing's for sure: some mysteries defy explanation, and certain legends endure for a reason. Stories like this make us question the boundaries of sanity and the dangers that may be lurking in the world's most remote places. Wendigo psychosis, still documented today, shows that psychological terror can be just as devastating as any legendary creature. But what if the legend isn't just in our minds? What if the fear we feel when hearing these tales is actually a primal instinct trying to warn us of something real? After all, the forest keeps secrets we may never be meant to uncover. If you enjoyed this chilling mystery and want to hear more stories like it, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we dive into the unknown, uncover legends, and explore the darkest corners of reality. But be careful. Some stories are more than just stories. And now that you know about the Wendigo, who's to say it doesn't know about you, too?